Hello and welcome to our TechSoup webinar, How to Select the Right Technology for Fiscal Year End. My name is Daphne Lagios. I'll be one of your presenters today. I just want to double check and make sure that you all can hear us okay and see the slide on your ReadyTalk screen. So if you could just chat in, and then we can know that everything is copacetic. All right, thank you. Excellent. So we are really excited to have you all here today. I am going to just get a little bit of background information about using ReadyTalk. If you have questions, please use the chat to chat your questions in. What we have planned for today is about half the time will be the presentation, and we have the second half, which will be open for questions. All lines are muted. If you lose your internet connection, reconnect using the link emailed to you. You can find upcoming and past webinars on the TechSoup website, and you will receive an email with this presentation recording and links after the email today. And for those of you on social media, tweet us using @TechSoup and use the hashtag TSWebinars. Okay, so just to start out, TechSoup is a global network bridging technology solutions and services for good. Would like to ask, where are you on the map? If you could chat in where you are calling in from. We're always interested to know where people are. We are located here in San Francisco. Okay, so we have some Seattle, Pennsylvania, Tucson, Hawaii, Alabama. I think we're covering a good bit of the country here. Excellent. One thing that's really exciting about TechSoup, because we do have a global network, is if you think about it, that there are nonprofits in Uganda and Romania that have the same needs that you do in terms of technology. Okay, so as you know, TechSoup, we partner with many different corporate partners who, and because of that, we're able to bring you great deals on technology. You see the list here. We have a big old list, probably for most of you. The biggest ones are the Adobe, Intuit, Microsoft, and Symantec. And I also want to mention that here at TechSoup, we have realized that the donation is not the end point, it's the beginning point. And so we have built up some services to assist people like yourself trying to figure out getting more information about the donation program, getting information about how to use the products, getting support. So we just wanted to share that we have the technology and we also have the support that is built in to help you. There we go. Okay, presenters today. So we are really lucky to have Nick Fynn, who's the Director of Marketing at TechSoup. My name is Daphne Lagios. I work in the TechSoup courses department, and assisting with chat today we have Zareen. We're really thrilled to have you here today also. And at this point, what I would like to do is I would like to turn this over to Nick, who will be talking about Fiscal Year End, why it is so important.
All right, great. Thank you so much, Daphne, and hello everybody in the webinar. It's great to be interacting with you guys in this great kind of digital format for everybody. Before I get started, we did a quick look at job titles of folks who would come into the webinar, and shout outs to the bunches of executive directors out there who are checking in on Fiscal Year End at TechSoup today. And I saw dozens and dozens of other technical and very interested folks on that list. So welcome all of you to this webinar. So to get into it, today we're here to talk about the Fiscal Year End. But that means a lot of different things to a lot of different people, so let me put some context around it. As all of you know, your organization has a fiscal year end. Your budgeting cycle starts at one point and you close the books at the end of a certain month. Here at TechSoup, we close our books at the end of June, and an extremely high number of nonprofits across the United States do the same thing. But it's not only in June. Nonprofits have a pretty wide variety of when they close their books. Lots of them do it at the end of December. Some of them do it more in line with how the school year falls. There's a great variety to when fiscal year end lands. But I'd love it if folks who are in the webinar now could just chat in. When does your fiscal year end? It would be great to get a view of some of the variety of the different months when people are ending their fiscal year end. Yeah, and of course what I'm seeing jump up here pretty quickly is lots of June 30th on the fiscal year end, so that's great. I see March, I see April, I see December as well. Lots of calendar year folks in there as well. So that's great. The reason we emphasize fiscal year end a lot at TechSoup during the month of June is in relationship to the pure number of nonprofits who have a fiscal year end at the end of June. In the old days of the TechSoup catalog, June was also when a lot of opportunities in the catalog shut off and they restart again in July. But things have changed since then, and so I want to touch on why fiscal year end is still important for a bunch of different reasons. So as I said, number one is because nonprofits are closing the books on fiscal 2019 right now. And that leads them straight into really important internal discussions about budgeting, about what the priorities are for next year. And in the context of technology, those are extremely important discussions to have, because almost everybody who works at a nonprofit today is using technology in some way or somehow, whether it's a simple version of Microsoft Office that's running Outlook, which is how you get your email, all the way to much more technical higher end implementations. Perhaps you're using Office 365 or Amazon Web Services, or you have some very technical hardware needs that you've worked with TechSoup on in the past. The budgeting, planning, and prioritizing of next year's investments and this year's remaining budget are a really big topic of discussion right now. For a lot of nonprofits whose books do close at the end of June, this is the time when you look around and you go, okay, I've still got $500 dedicated to this item, which we haven't moved forward on, and now I need to figure out, what am I going to do with that money? Are we still moving on with that item? Is there something different that we can look forward and anticipate a need in the second half of 2019? And if we can spend remaining budget this year, then I can get that covered and not have to worry about it in next year's budget. We always get a lot of questions along those lines during fiscal year end from organizations who are trying to maximize what they've got left of their budget right now and trying to figure out what are the smart investments to make in the future. And the opportunity to plan ahead for next year's technology investments is really important, because the worst kind of technology plan is the lack of a plan. If you're not thinking through clearly, at least on an Excel spreadsheet, or having a discussion with the executive director and other finance folks and technology folks about what is it that's coming up next year that we need to invest in, now is the time to start having those discussions. It's better to at least understand, if you're not going to be able to afford to do something, what are you going to do differently? And if you do need to afford a major investment of some kind in technology, you need to plan ahead and make sure that that money is available, and that you're looking at the right products to meet whatever your nonprofit's needs are. And then the final piece of fiscal year end importance is, as I set up at the front, there are some TechSoup partners who actually reset their allotments or reset the limits on what nonprofits can get through the TechSoup catalog. So I want to turn to that next, because that is also still a common question, and I think that can be helpful for some folks. So let's start with Adobe, which is an extremely important partner at TechSoup. They've been a longtime supporter and helped nonprofits for many years, primarily with communications-oriented products. Probably everybody on this webinar knows about Adobe Creative Cloud. I am curious actually, folks out in Chatland, how many of your nonprofits are actually using Creative Cloud right now to produce board reports or advertisements or even video? There's a pretty big swath of product that you can create with Creative Cloud. Adobe also provides Acrobat Pro Document Cloud. And then we also have very limited numbers of an older Adobe Acrobat Pro 2017 platform. And then there's also something we call internally Pepe, which is Photoshop Elements and Premiere Elements. Adobe does reset the limits on what nonprofits can get from them, and that reset happens on July 1st. And where that really matters is in the catalog of donated products, which as I mentioned is the Acrobat Pro and Photoshop Elements and Premiere Elements. Those are limited to 4 donated products per fiscal year. So if you've reached your limit of 4, you have to wait until July 1st for that limit to reset before you can make some additional requests for those Adobe products. Now this does not apply for Adobe Cloud products. So Creative Cloud or Document Cloud licenses, there are unlimited restrictions on the number of those that you can get, so they don't coincide with the fiscal year end. And so if you're a cloud forward nonprofit, you're using that platform, you're investing in those technologies, you have a little more flexibility. Symantec is another opportunity that we should talk about in the next slide. They are our primary security partner. They do a great job helping thousands of nonprofits across the United States protect those laptops and desktops from the never-ending litany of malware and that we hear about in the daily news. Symantec also resets their limits on July 1st, and let's go into a little detail about here. We have 1 Norton products, Norton Small Business or Norton Security, and up to 20 licenses for the product. Or you can get 2 enterprise products per fiscal year with up to 100 licenses per product. That's endpoint protection or mail security. Embarrassingly, I noticed that I left the Adobe items at the bottom of this slide, so you can ignore those. But Symantec's limits do move again on July 1st. So if you're maxed out on one of those Symantec products and you need to get more of it, you would wait until after July 1st to do that. Intuit is also another major partner that lots of nonprofits use. They reset their limits on July 1st. And their limit is very simple to understand. It's 1 Intuit product per fiscal year and 1 subscription product per org in perpetuity. So once you're subscribing to QuickBooks Online, for instance, that's what you've got. And then we should move to what is always for folks probably the hardest one to understand, because our relationship with Microsoft and the support they provide for the nonprofit community is pretty complicated. So I'm going to spend a little time here, and by all means please do chat in with your questions on this particular piece as we come to it. So the Microsoft catalog at TechSoup essentially is 2 different catalogs. We have a donation catalog, which is the traditional catalog that we've worked with at TechSoup. Donations have limits based on the anniversary of the first donation request your nonprofit placed after July 27th, 2011. I'm just going to pause there right there for a second and let that sink in. It's difficult to track, and if you don't know the exact date of when your nonprofit first made a donation request after July 27, 2011, you can actually log on to the TechSoup website and research that, and we're going to look at that in a couple more minutes in terms of the exact place on the site that you would go to research that. At the end of that 2-year cycle, a new cycle begins and a new allotment is available. And here's what the allotments are. You could get up to 50 titles of any donated desktop product or CAL, which is client access licenses, which matter in the context of server technologies. And the other titles you might think about here, the basic one is obviously Office 2019. So you would be able to get up to 50 copies of that within that 2-year cycle. Other products have slightly different limits. For Windows Server Standard, it is 25 copies during that 2-year cycle. And then other than Windows Server Standard, it's up to 5 donated server products. And I've put a URL here in the slide, which you can take a look at. You'll have to copy it out there. But that is a great piece on the website about how to understand the Microsoft eligibility. And I'll see if we can actually grab that link and throw it into chat for everybody so that you can click on that. Thanks, Zareen. The second Microsoft catalog to talk about is what we call the Discount and Cloud Catalog. And that's the newer piece of Microsoft at TechSoup. And as I've already mentioned in the context of Adobe, there are unlimited discounted or cloud offers available to nonprofits, and they are not limited within the fiscal year. So for discount and cloud, you don't have fiscal year limitations, and you can tap those resources for your nonprofit at any point during the fiscal year with no concern that you're going to overrun a limit or not be able to get the things that you need. And I think this is a good moment in time to really push this general trend in technology for nonprofits, which is that nonprofits are becoming more and more cloud forward. And what we really mean by that is like they are leveraging the cloud as a tool that actually makes productivity and collaboration, particularly for nonprofits with multiple sites or who have people in different geographic locations. For instance, perhaps you have field staff that are out serving a particular community. The cloud provides an opportunity for nonprofits to really pull people together in the same digital space, even when you're not together in the same geographic space. There are also fantastic advantages to it in terms of security, the reliability of not losing important information because a hard drive somewhere crashed and you didn't have it backed up somewhere. So with the cloud forward and cloud adoption strategies a lot of nonprofits are using, and the much looser limits around cloud platforms vis-a-vis fiscal year end, it definitely is a place that IT technical and leadership staff at nonprofits are looking. So just want to point that out for folks. Okay, moving on, we're going to go through a couple of screenshots about how to actually check your Microsoft donation limits, that crazy reset dates algorithm that I was talking about at the front end of this Microsoft section. Here's how you do it. And I've used my own account here as an example. So I'm assuming if you're on this webinar that you already have a TechSoup account that you're able to log into. And remember, you will receive a copy of this presentation after the webinar is over. So if you can't follow along yourself right now, you'll get these screenshots in the presentation and you'll be able to do it. But to go into the details of it, you're going to need to log into your account. And you'll see I have a little red box in the top right corner of the screen there, and a little icon there on the first icon, which is a little person, right? That's your account. And you're going to log in there. And then as we go to the next slide, you are actually going to need both of the what I would call the navigation features. First, in the black bar, you're going to have to go to the area, the second one over, that says Request History. And then below that, you will see in the gray bar a Manage Microsoft Requests link. And once you click on that Manage Microsoft Requests link, that will bring you into the zone where you can really start to look at what the dates were that you requested. And I believe there is a feature in here that will let you understand exactly when your reset date limit is. I know it's confusing. And you know, as TechSoup itself is a 501c3 nonprofit, just like you, we often have to work with not the most modern tools available to the free market. We work a little bit harder and smarter. We do more with less, and I know you all understand what that's like. Unfortunately, this is the best we can make the experience right now to understand what that Microsoft reset limit is. The good news is that the donation products available from Microsoft in the catalog are extremely valuable and helpful to nonprofits, and the cost to you is so much lower than what the open market is required to pay, that these really still remain extremely beneficial parts of what we can offer to nonprofits. So that takes us to the end of my initial discussion on the fiscal year end. We have made it through in a decent amount of time. It's 11:20 right now where I am. So now we have the opportunity to start fielding some questions about fiscal year end. So start thinking about what some questions are. And I'm going to quickly go over a couple of other partners that also have July 1st resets on the products that they provide through TechSoup. One of them is Veritas, which is a newer product in the TechSoup catalog, but extremely helpful to nonprofits. They have a fiscal year reset on July 1st. Box does not have an expiration date because sort of like the other cloud products we've discussed, there's no expiration once you've made your request from Box. It's something that you have in perpetuity, so no need to renew and no need for a limit based on fiscal year. A lot of nonprofits have used the Autodesk program through TechSoup in the past for lots of interesting reasons. And the Autodesk reset, I believe, is also on July 1st, and their limit is 10 subscriptions per fiscal year. Amazon Web Services is a partner that works with TechSoup to help nonprofits have space in the cloud for the applications they need to run. They provide one grant per fiscal year that also resets on July 1st. And then a newer part of our catalog, Asana Project Management is great software. They are limited to one per org with renewals after that, but no fiscal year specific limits because of how the program is structured. There are, of course, many, many, many more offers in the TechSoup catalog, and I cannot go over each of them on this webinar. But as you look at those offers online, if you look at the right-hand side in the middle of the screen, you'll see details and some tabs around what are the limitations and the details of that offer. Make sure to check those limits and details if you're concerned about using an allotment that you've already tried to use during the fiscal year. They can often help you understand how to best plan for bringing that product in-house in the future. Okay, so with that, I'm going to start taking a look at some of the chats that folks have asked. And I want to so I do have a question here about expiration dates. We don't necessarily have expiration dates posted on the site, and by these I assume you're asking about the expiration dates for particular pieces of software. But if you're looking for the reset dates, which are different, right? The reset is when the fiscal reset happens for each program. Yes, those are listed on the site in that details area that I was talking about. So there's that. And then there is a question here about knowing which products would be the best fit for a religious organization. I can't answer that for you because it depends so much on what it is that you're trying to do. Now, I do know that a lot of religious organizations, especially ones that are actually hosting services, are looking for opportunities for sound and video amplification, as well as for opportunities to perhaps stream services digitally. We do have a great hardware program at TechSoup where a lot of churches and religious organizations turn for help on that kind of stuff. We have an affinity program with Dell. We have an affinity program with Lenovo. We also now work with HP. All three of those are great suppliers of hardware if that's the kind of thing you're looking for. And we also have a really fantastic refurbished computer program at TechSoup. which is where we try to take a little more of a green approach to computers. And we work with several different suppliers who provide very current, modern, powerful computers with modern processors and great hard drives running Windows 10. But they have been gently used and then refurbished with an appropriate refurbisher partner. So if that hardware is something that is interesting, then I definitely recommend taking a look at the hardware opportunities on the TechSoup site.
And I'm actually, I apologize, Dick, I'm just going to jump in and the question about how to get assistance knowing which products are best for your organization or your nonprofit, that's such a huge question. And I can speak a little bit to that. So there are a couple things that we try to do here at TechSoup. For example, like the webinars we have will often be product-based. So you will be able to get an idea of what the product does and if it has the functionality that you need for your organization. Also, the product pages, we try to put as much information into the product page. Actually, what I would like to do, if I could just take a second, I'm going to share my screen. And I just want to show you something real quick. Okay, so what I've done here is I just typed in Adobe, and this is actually related to another question we got about how can I find out how to use these products. When you go to the product page, you'll find the link right here, and then you also, products and services on the right-hand side, you will see the resources. So this is where you can get some really great information to read up on what products may be the best for your organization. We have articles, we have blogs, we have forums, we have webinars. I'm actually going to go back to the regular conference. Also what we have, once you've gotten your, and this is going back to one of our earlier questions, once you've gotten your product and you want to know how to use the products, once again, go to our resources. We have webinars, articles. We also have TechSoup courses. Most of them are, they're on-demand courses. We do have some live events, and they can provide you with the support that you need for using the products, because that's what you want to do. You want to be able to use it as efficiently as possible for your organization.
Okay, and I want to come back to a couple of other questions that have popped up here. There's a question on what exactly does the reset mean? Are you losing the license or can you renew it? You are not losing the license, nor does it mean you're renewing the license. What it actually means is that you can add additional licenses. So for instance, going back to our example of the Microsoft Office 2019 limit, you're limited to 50 licenses of that within that 2-year period. After that 2-year period ends, you could add another 50 licenses, so you actually have a full count of 100 licenses. So no, the reset does not mean that the software no longer works or that you have to renew it. It simply means that you can add more licenses as you might need, for instance, if you've hired more staff or have more computers that you need to use. There is another question that came in, but I have lost track of it here. But somebody was asking the difference, what does access to discounted rates mean? That is a great question, something that folks pop up all the time. And before I answer it, I want to explain a little bit that what TechSoup does is we go to the technology community and we say, hey, those of you who are really interested in doing social good with your product, you want to be a good corporate partner, you want to help nonprofits, work with us to make sure that we get these products into the hands of nonprofits that need them and can use them. And as part of that, you can imagine there's a lot of different kinds of deals technology companies want to make. Access to discounted rates is one of those kinds of deals. And what it means is you pay a very small admin fee to TechSoup, and then what you get is access to a deeply discounted rate at the corporate level. And that means that you can go to a company and instead of paying full price for their product, you're paying perhaps 50% of what the market rate is for their product. So discounted rates means that you are still paying something to the technology company that makes that product, but because you've paid that very small TechSoup admin fee, now that corporation knows that you are a nonprofit, you've been validated by TechSoup, and that you are eligible to get the discounted rate on whatever that product is that you're looking at.
Okay, and then I'm going to jump in. We had a question also about QuickBooks Online, and I just wanted to speak to that because that's related to what Nick just spoke about. So what we're able to do is provide access to you for discount for what you would get in the retail market for discounted prices. And the question we had was, does Intuit offer QuickBooks Online, or is there a TechSoup product supported by Intuit? And so the question is, we do offer QuickBooks Online through TechSoup. It is not a TechSoup product, but we do offer the access to the discounted rate for the QuickBooks Online. I don't remember offhand, but I know that it's a really big savings in terms of the QuickBooks Online. Before I worked with TechSoup courses, I did work up at the customer service, and I remember talking to people who were moving over to the QuickBooks Online, and it was quite a big savings. So what we have is we do have QuickBooks Online. It is their product you're getting. We're able to give you access to it. And then for those of you who feel like the desktop is sufficient, we also have the QuickBooks the QuickBooks desktop version. Okay, so we have another question. Oh, our treasurer gets rotated yearly. Yes, that is one of the challenges of working in nonprofit. Do we need to purchase new access if we do not use all three that you paid for? I'm thinking that question might be related to the desktop version of QuickBooks. But what happens is if the organization is the one that's actually accessing these licenses. So if you have someone new coming in, you don't need to get a new license, but what you will need to do is work with whoever, whether it's Microsoft or Adobe, to be able to transfer that access. But that's a really good question. So you do not need to keep on buying the product every year because you have a new treasurer, but you will need to be able to transfer that access over.
All right, great. So please keep sending in your questions. We've got a lot of different topics that people are bringing up. I do want to go back to the hardware stuff I was talking about a little bit ago because a couple of more people have asked about that. I want to be clear that in terms of the partnerships we have with Dell and with Lenovo and with HP, those are access to discounted rate partnerships. So what that means again is that you're paying a small admin fee to TechSoup, and then you're going to the Dell or Lenovo or HP catalog and getting the items that you need from them at a greatly discounted rate. We also have a partnership with an organization called Journey Ed, and it's a similar deal there. They are not necessarily the brand name of hardware, but they carry all sorts of interesting stuff at Journey Ed. The admin fee to TechSoup from Journey Ed is $10, and then you're able to go into their catalog. Although I'm seeing right now that product is out of stock, so sorry about that. HP is particularly interesting right now because we have not had a solid place for nonprofits to get printers very affordably in the past. HP printers are very well regarded, and the partnership with HP is a great opportunity for nonprofits specifically looking for printers to be able to get some deals on those. They said the internet was going to kill printing, but I think we all know that that has not happened. In fact, I think we print more paper now than we ever have. I find it just as helpful as a computer screen sometimes. It sure is a lot easier to take notes on something that I've printed out. All right, keep those questions coming in. I'll kick it over to Daphne.
Yep. I'm going to jump in. There's a question about somebody who is already using QuickBooks Online and they want to transfer over to the TechSoup product without a disruption, because that's, ultimately that's the most important thing. We want things to be running well. So what I'm actually going to do, I'm going to do another quick screen share. As part of this is we want to show you where you can find the information you might need on our website. So this is the QuickBooks Online site, or the page. What I've done is on the product page, just want to point out description, subscription details, and rules and eligibility. Now for the QuickBooks Online, this product, and I'm actually going to scroll down. For this one, if you already have QuickBooks Online, there is a process for moving your data over. It is outlined in the product page. We do have other resources that will outline the products. So it is possible, but just so you know that there is a process. It isn't a flip the switch with the QuickBooks Online, but there is a process where you're able to move your data over. So thank you for that question.
Okay, another question came up on how do we actually use the discount, for instance, if you're using Dell or Lenovo or one of those. That's a great question. The process is that you pay the small TechSoup admin fee, and then what will happen is you get a fulfillment email from us. And that fulfillment email contains the instructions for accessing the discounted rate on the partner website. And usually those are quick instructions and the actual link that you would click on. So once you've placed that order through TechSoup, you have to watch for the email as the second step and then follow the instructions in that email.
Okay. And so another question came in, a really good one, is how do we get access to the TechSoup discount? So what will happen is that in order to be eligible, you do need to go through, it's a validation process. You would go to TechSoup.org and you would need to register your organization. And then on our end, we do our due diligence of making sure that you are a 501c3 nonprofit, and that the agent is actually the person who's related, who's with the organization. Once you are eligible, or once you are validated, you will receive an email back. And then, yes, at that point, what you would be able to do is you can check your eligibility, and then you can go into into the website and start making purchases of the technology you need.
And I do want to jump in and ask a question back to folks, which is thinking forward in the next 6 months, the second half of 2019. I'm really curious about whether you think your nonprofit will be more likely to invest in hardware or more likely to actually invest in programs and software. They are very different markets, and TechSoup does a lot of work trying to make sure that we are offering nonprofits the things that they actually need. And so it would be very helpful just to get some informal feedback from you guys on this webinar about whether or not hardware or software or maybe both, as I see that answer has popped up already. I see another question about, is there a way to see what the discounted rate will be before paying the admin fee? And that is a great question. I want to thank you for asking that, and I'll be perfectly honest, no. We are not always able to provide a visibility into exactly what those offers are. The reason is that the offers themselves change often at a blinding speed. Particularly in the case of hardware, that market moves so quickly, and the big hardware companies are always changing prices, adding new products, tweaking features, and literally by the time that we could go out the door with an email explaining to you what's available, they could have changed all of that over the weekend, and then the email would not be correct. So I definitely feel your pain on that question. We are trying to figure out how to work with those partners to give much more visibility into what the specific offers are. The good news is that these access to discounted rates partnerships with these hardware companies is that because that access lasts for a year, you have a year to really be surfing on their site and looking at what are the different deals that are available. And frankly, I think that's probably the smart way to really use those products, is to spend some time looking at their site and really seeing what the sweet spot is of features and price point, and hopefully that will get you the answers that you need. And hopefully in time we'll be able to do a better job of giving you a view into what discounts are specifically available.
Okay, thank you, Nick. As one of the answers to your question of what people are going to be investing in, we have someone who's they're looking at their network security, and they have a current bid to install, and at over $5,000. So I would like to actually point out something that we do have here at TechSoup is that we have built out these services. And the services will and I'm going to do another screen share. Please bear with me. But what we realized here at TechSoup is that it wasn't enough for us to just say, here's a technology, go for it. Well, the last year or so, we've started. It's a help desk services. This is on our website. If you go under the services tab, and you see we have a number of different services. This is where what we've done is we've partnered with a number of tech support organizations that have experience working with nonprofits, and we are using them to help you get to where you need to go. And so this could be an option if you are looking at bringing in some contract to do some work. Maybe take a look. What happens with our site is there's a free consultation. You send in your form, and then you'll be contacted, and then there'll be a discussion about kind of what you need. Is this what you need? So that's one thing that we really hope to build out more so in the future is that support, so then you can use the technology to the best.
All right, great. Keep those questions coming. It's great to start seeing what people are going to be working on next year. I see a couple of notes about the migration from Windows 7 to 10. So good job. Keep pushing on that migration. I will say that maintaining those operating systems, especially coming off of Windows 7 to 10, extremely important for the security of your nonprofit. And again, as we move to a very cloud-forward environment, those older operating systems, I still speak with people here and there that are running Windows XP on machines that are really important to their nonprofits. And you just can't do that anymore. The security risks are too high. The productivity cost is too much. You really do need to make sure that those migrations into the current Windows environment happen as fast as you can. So great job having that as something that you're moving on. I see some other questions about servers, and some of this honestly more technical than I can actually answer. I will say that, again, in server technology, a lot of what the TechSoup look forward is about is moving to those cloud-based server packages rather than just putting more hardware on site for you. It requires more technical know-how to do it. But again, as Daphne was just mentioning, we do have services in place to help nonprofits who are going through that migration right now. It is a learning pain for sure, but we do really believe that in the long run it is much better for your nonprofit to be looking at those cloud-based solutions rather than adding more server hardware to your local office. So I'd encourage you to go into the services areas that I know that we've put up in chat. You can take a look at some of the migration services, some of the help desk services, managed IT services, and those folks will be able to engage with you in a little more depth and detail than I'm able to right now, helping you suss out what might be a better server solution for you and how to think about pricing and implementation.
Excellent. And we also have a question about toner cartridges. So we're going from, it's interesting, we're going from virtual desktop imaging servers to toners. We cover everything here. So what happens with with things that would be part of like our hardware? So right now we don't have, the question is if we have any deals on its OEM toner cartridges. We don't have them currently as part of our catalog. But what does happen is that we are often able to get access to stashes of discounted products. But if you have something that you are interested in keeping an eye out for, there is a newsletter which will one of our newsletters which covers the new products. Anything that we have new, and often it tends to be kind of that toner or cartridge or even a printer that would be listed in that new product newsletter that you can sign up, so you can get information about there that way.
All right, and then picking up another question from Julia, who asks about brochures and the cloud. If I'm reading the question right, it seems like you're looking for kind of a not very sophisticated, crazy implementable cloud solution so you can share resources across locations. I will tell you that's the kind of thing that I love Box for. Box, who I mentioned earlier, are a great partner to nonprofits. And what I really like about their product is, in the age of the cloud and things just become more and more complicated and technical to implement and understand, Box has really created a very simple product, which is literally just like putting a box in the cloud and then you put your stuff in it. And you can share it, and folks at other office locations should be able to grab brochures and flyers and other assets that you put into Box and download them locally. So if you're looking for a simple thing that makes it easier, it's Box, B-O-X, Box at TechSoup.org.
And I'd just like to jump in, so keep your questions coming, but I would like to ask you a question. How many of your organizations, how many of you have already moved over to the cloud? How many of you are thinking about it? If you could just answer that. We're always just really, we do know that the cloud is going to be part of our future, and we certainly have a lot more requests for support. But if you could just let me know how many of you have already made the switch. How many of you are planning on it, in the process? Some items in the cloud, yeah, right. Well, and then what happens is that the one thing about the cloud is it does offer you the collaboration and the productivity, as well as the security. Okay, that's interesting. Okay, thank you. Can I just bump into one? and I don't know, I think if this is was someone who said that they're new to the organization, it's fairly technologically slow. Most people are still using paper calendars. And so one thing that we do find is that's a challenge. You come into an organization, you come into something that you were like, oh, how do we get them moving forward? And we know that can be a challenge kind of from our experience talking to people. The more of your executive team that you can get on board, the easier to push it through. Those migrations, it is a lot of work, but the feedback is this is really so easy and we're able to do more. So that's great. And the comment was, I'm looking at imaging and looking at moving to the cloud. Excellent.
And we did have a couple of fair questions to ask, like what does it mean when you say moving to the cloud, and what does that environment mean? And I want to meld that with another question that somebody also, an answer somebody posted, which is that they're currently hybrid. So let's tap into those a little minute. So when we're talking about moving to the cloud, we really are talking about leveraging the new technology that's really come into existence over the last 5 years, where instead of using your own servers, you're using somebody else's servers. But that means that they are responsible for making sure those servers are backed up, that there are many versions of your content wherever they need to be, that the servers are operating properly. So you don't have to worry about that piece of it. So when we talk about are you moving to the cloud, it's really that question. Are you beginning to use those services that let you not rely only on the hardware in your own office to store everything? So hybrid really is kind of what most nonprofits I think we speak to are today, which is you're doing bits of both. And in the real world, perhaps it's fair to say that there will never be a 100% cloud organization. Everybody will really end up in a hybrid role. But it's really important to understand internally for your nonprofit which pieces of it are going to the cloud, and where do you need that local piece. Somebody else asked, is G Suite a cloud? Yes, it is, absolutely. When they named that, I thought they should have called it Suite G actually. But G Suite is definitely a cloud platform, and we have a lot of folks who are using that for sure. I certainly use it every day in my work. I think they've done a great job.
Okay, and I just want to, there's someone who just chimed in and said that you're doing the physical backup tapes, which I think there are probably lots of organizations that are doing that. When I've worked at a couple nonprofits, and that was one of my jobs, to do the backup tapes and put it in the safe in the closet. And right now Zareen is laughing at me as she's like, oh my gosh, I'm completely dating myself. But it's all important, right? That security is so, so important. So you do what you need to do, and then once you get to the point where you're able to move on, then you can have some, what we have here is we have Veritas Backup. And that would be when you're ready to move on and to move to the cloud for security issues and concerns, and also for your time. That would be a great resource. So that's the Veritas Backup that we have. And thank you, Zareen, for just posting that and the link into the chat.
Yeah, the disaster recovery piece of Veritas is really a fantastic product to have in the TechSoup catalog. Nobody anticipates something going drastically wrong, but when it does, boy, it sure makes a difference if you had a plan in place and some way to back it up. So yeah, if we can move on from the simple tape backups. I can remember as a child when the very first computer programs we loaded were actually off of cassette tapes themselves. When I try to explain that to my kid today, he thinks I'm crazy. But those tapes, not as good as what Veritas can probably provide you as a service. But better to be doing something rather than nothing at all. Okay, keep those questions coming. We are getting to the last 5 minutes here, so if there's something that you've been thinking about, you've been listening to all the other answers, checking out chat, thinking through what you have to ask about, now is a great time to get it back in. And I wanted to circle back again to the big picture. We are now in the month of June. We have a lot of limits that reset at the end of June going into July. If you are looking at a particular product that you've already maxed out on and you want to go to increase the number of licenses you have, you can wait until July 1st to do it in some cases. But if your nonprofit is sitting around right now trying to figure out what to do with that last piece of technology budget, which you haven't yet spent in fiscal 2019, and you've got something like 26 days left to plan ahead, make a decision, and do it, now is the great time to really be looking at the things that you can get through TechSoup. You can of course get technology from anywhere on the free market that you want. You could go buy your computers at Best Buy. You could order stuff directly from vendors. But TechSoup exists here to really make the world of nonprofits have an easier, a better time accessing technology and using it to meet the needs of the folks that you serve. As I said at the front, we are not a for-profit company. We are a 501c3. Our mission literally is to help other nonprofits do the things that they are working on. And so we really do try to provide you with access to great technology products in all sorts of different ways, cloud formats, access to discounted rates, straight up donations, all of it. So I'm scanning at the last few questions that are coming in, and let's see if Daphne might have some answer there.
Yeah, and so there was a question that popped in, and it looked like it was about servers. Servers and maybe cloud-based servers. So once again, that would be something that I myself would not be able to answer that. I would suggest looking. We do have some great information on servers in our site. We do. You can call customer service. They can point you to finding the information that you need. And so then I'm just realizing, great question, how can I find out if my organization already has been registered with TechSoup? Actually, so probably the easiest way to do it would be to send our customer service an email or to call them. If you want to just pop your, actually we'll have a record of this chat. So what we can do for that particular question, looks like Anna Astrid, we can look that up and we can contact you. That does happen quite often. We get when nonprofits, you get new people rolling in all the time, and they don't know if they even have an account set up. But we can help you with that one. All right. Oh, good. Last minute question about QuickBooks Online, transferring information from one treasurer to another. So what that would be, Julia, what I could do is I can send you some information directly about that. But what that would be is that you would still keep the program, but what you would be doing is making sure that that person has access. So then the treasurer's work will go on even if it's a different treasurer. Okay, so we're at oh my God, a minute to the top of the hour. What I'd love to do is if you could take a moment and chat in the most important thing you learned today about fiscal year, about anything. We'd be really interested in hearing through the chat what you think was the most valuable piece or tidbit of information.
And I also want to ask one more thing from those of you who attended this webinar, and thanks again for spending the time with us today. One of the great things about the nonprofit community is that we all talk to each other and we recommend things to each other and we tell each other, here's what worked for us, you might give it a try. And we do that because unlike a lot of competitive businesses, we're not competing against each other for a profit margin. We're all in the same business together, which is trying to make the world a better place We all do it in different ways. Some of us work specifically in IT in a technology company or in a nonprofit. Some of us work specifically on marketing, or we're an executive director, or we're a fundraiser. But at the end of the day, the power of this community is that we can also tell each other what's working for each other and what's helping. So if TechSoup's been helpful for your nonprofit, and you're interacting with other nonprofits and you think they should know about us, please let them know. It's free to join TechSoup. There is a sign-up process you need to go through because we need to make sure that the organization is a valid 501c3. But nonprofits listen to each other, and every time you recommend somebody to TechSoup, and that helps them do the work that they're doing so much better for the world.
Okay, and at this point, I would like to thank all of you. This is seconding what Nick said. Thank you so much for spending your time with us. As I said, we are a nonprofit ourselves, and I always like to think that it's as much of a conversation that we're having, and we can work together so everybody can meet their mission. Thank you so much. I just want to say that you will be getting an email. The slides and the recording will be available, and that we hope that you come back and join us again. Thank you so much.